is News Talk.
All right, it's Thursdays Off the Ball. Nathan with you until 10 o'clock this evening. It is the eve of the new Premier League season. Our live commentaries return this Sunday. Newcastle, West Ham and the Harry Kane derby. Spurs, Manchester City, both live on Sunday. We're going to be looking ahead to the new season and also talking about Lionel Messi's move to Paris Saint-Germain with John Giles, who'll be with us at 7:30 and back with us on the football show as well. We're also going to be checking in with the Mayo legend Dermot Flanagan ahead of this weekend's All-Ireland semi-final, and also a major fundraiser he's doing, cycling to every single GAA ground in Mayo over the next 8 days, chatting about his career and his father's career, the last Mayo man to lift Sam Maguire. 53106 is the text number, at Off the Ball on Twitter. And if you think I'm biased, wait till you hear Richie McCormack tonight. Richie, what is happening with Bohs?
2-0 down as they await the second half to get underway in Thessaloniki. They were pretty much PAOK worse. Their 2-0 lead, has to be said. Bohs not covering themselves in glory with the two defensive lapses. The first allowed Stefan Schwab a free header, and then the second, they were asleep from the water break, which allowed Diego Biseswar zoom in one-on-one with James Talbot and took the ball away. So PAOK now ahead 3-2 on aggregate. We haven't had the cauldron that we were expecting. There's a sign off to the left-hand side as you watch the stream, which says that restricting access to the stadiums for, this is paraphrasing, for people who've been vaccinated or whatever, is racist, which is interesting. But there's about 15,000 and 20,000 inside the stadium, I'd say. And PAOK very much worth their lead. But 45 minutes to come and still just a goal in it on aggregate. I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
We'll keep a very close eye on that. Stephen Doyle is over at that game. He's going to join us after the game as well, bring us the post-match interview. So he's in Greece and we'll bring you the full time as it happens. Keep a close eye on Rovers and Dundalk as well throughout the evening. Joe Molloy is with us as well. Evening, Joe.
Evening, gents.
Dermot Flanagan coming away after 8 o'clock. No pressure on Dermot as a kid. His father, Sean, only Mayo's greatest ever player, captained them in 1950 and 1951. Team of the century, team of the millennium. Goes on to be an incredibly successful politician, Minister for Health, goes to Europe as an MEP for 10 years. That's a lot of pressure to deal with, yet still he manages to handle it and go on to have an unbelievable career and also be one of Mayo's greatest ever players.
Yeah, well, I think it's good for Dermot and indeed the whole county that they haven't let his father's achievements loom large over them.
He said his father never spoke about the curse or never knew anything about it. So therefore, it clearly didn't exist. Though Dermot Flanagan is an inspiration for those of us who would hope that maybe their children would follow on one day and, return and pull on the green and red. Because Dermot Flanagan grew up in Dublin, spent all I think he moved to Dublin when he was 5, as his dad was a politician, played for Clontarf, played for Raheny Gales, and then at 16 saw the light and said, you know what, I'm going to play for Mayo. As he was on the verge of being called up to the Dublin Minors, thought, no, I'm going to trek down from my home to play for Mayo and follow in my father's footsteps. That is the sort of dedication we want, is what I'm going to be saying to my son, who's going to Croke Park on Sunday, wearing a Dublin jersey.
Oh, no.
How did that happen?
Dear, oh dear.
Mother, just bad parenting.
Oh, man. So he's swapping his England jersey for his Dublin jersey. I mean, you've had a tough summer, really.
It's the same one. I wanted to leave him at home, but apparently I'm not allowed. Built up this thing during COVID of the first opportunity to go back to Croke Park. We'd all go as a family. And then he decides, no, I'm a Dublin supporter. It's pissing me off.
This spells, I think, a rough 40 years ahead for you and your son.
Quite possibly. It's a hard argument to win. It's a hard argument. I lost the argument when I brought them to the ladies' final in, was it 2017, and Dublin beat Mayo, and they went as Mayo supporters and came home, one of them as a Dublin supporter, going, why would I support Mayo when Dublin always win? And that's a hard argument when you're telling a 6-year-old that there's something to be gained from suffering and pain that's more enjoyable some way than actual success.
Yeah, no, it's rock solid logic, in fairness to the boy. You can't fault him. I mean, you're offering him maybe, and it's still very much maybe one of the truly great days of your life.
Exactly.
Or 6 to 7 really great days every decade.
Yeah, but will they be really great, or are they just going to be grand days? They're grand
character
days.
building. It's character building.
Yeah. Did you ever turn your back on Meath, Richie? Did you ever pull on the Dublin jersey?
No, never. Well, to be honest with you, to be wholly honest, and without wanting to get too deep into the story, there were Dublin and Cork jerseys for some reason in my childhood house back in the day, but it was always Meath. And to see Like there's a sting attached to seeing the kids pull on a Dublin jersey, and all three have Dublin jerseys, and they've all been to Dublin matches, and they're all very much Dubs. And there is, I can sympathise with Nathan here. There is a bit of a sting, even if you know in your heart of hearts that when you're based like in Dublin, like surrounded by Dublin supporters in the midst of the most golden generation of Dublin football there's ever been, it's not even an argument. There's no argument to be had. They're just going to grow up Dublin supporters, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to swallow pretty hard, grit your teeth, and hope for one of those 5 or 6 good days per decade.
But the success of the GAA in the future quite literally relies on the sons of country people going back and playing. Yeah. And they need, actually, in all seriousness, to find a process of making that easier, of actually going and actively encouraging all these kids of Culchies who are in all these academies up and down Dublin to say, don't dream of playing Dublin. Dream of going back home where you're, let's be honest, far more likelihood of actually getting a game.
It's an outmoded system. Yeah, it's an outmoded system all around, because it's not just the people moving inwards to Dublin. There's been Dublin people moving outwards to Meath and to Kildare and to Louth and wherever else in the surrounding areas. So everything has gotten a little bit muddied, especially in Leinster. And like the idea, looking 20, 50 years into the future, and we're hearing about, a world without cars there in the news before the bulletin and all that kind of stuff. Like the idea of inter-county just is beginning to seem, we're at the very start of it, I think, of seeming a little bit outmoded.
I don't know, maybe the listeners have been through this and have seen their kids in the Dublin jersey and have found a way of drawing them back home and somehow convincing them that those 8, 9 great days, very good days a decade, just aren't worth it. Just aren't worth it. That pain is better. 53106 is the text number. Have you a fantasy football team pick, Joe?
That's so weird you said that. That's what I spent the previous 20 minutes doing. And I went big, I spent big, and then bankrupted myself with 4 empty slots. And so I've had to rethink it. I'm definitely thinking about the old auto pick at this stage.
Joe.
For the first time in, I'd say, 7, 8 years, I'm back doing it this year.
It has gone to a whole new level of popularity over the past 12 months. I think it was something to do with lockdown and people spending more time at home and watching more games. But last season was the biggest I can ever remember. And I'm turning it into an episode of Dacast. It's all that's spoken about in my house now. Morning, noon and night is fantasy football and picking the team. And it's bloody difficult. I've been stressing on it for the last 24 hours. I've gone through about 8 different teams because Lukaku has ruined it. Lukaku's arrival has ruined it.
It's a game changer. And so tell me this, right? Because I don't know what happens when I hit send my team. I presume after I've picked all my slots that I can then pick my formation afterwards.
You can pick your formation, so you'll only have 11 starters. Okay. And also, until the deadline tomorrow night at 6:30, you can change your team as often as possible. So it's not final right now.
I presume in this day and age, because I was like, God, the forwards look a bit scant. And then, of course, you realise wonderfully that like Mo Salah's a midfielder. So I presume the only formation really these days is at 3-5-2. Is that your way of doing it? And you get as many scoring midfielders in there as possible?
Quite possibly. Now, there's a lot of good attacking defenders. So Alexander-Arnold and Robertson contribute so many assists and goals that actually they're among the highest scorers, and you definitely want one of them in your team as well. Okay. But it's almost too simplified now, fantasy football, for the interest levels that are there. When you look at American football, fantasy is this massive business, and every possible position can get points. Like N'Golo Kante is worthless in fantasy football. He's not. You do not want him on your team. But also they have, as you say, moved Marcus Rashford, Mason Greenwood, Mo Salah, Bruno Fernandes are all midfielders. When actually most of them are now a modern forward player, which means it's almost impossible. And with the exception of Kane and Lukaku when he comes, there's not many real standout forwards.
Vardy is quite expensive at the moment as well. You see, back when I was last really into it, you got Lampard in and you got Morten Gamst Pedersen in, and they were quite unusual because they were free scoring midfielders.
Morten Gamst Pedersen.
Listen, the man was a machine for about 5 years.
Was. Yeah.
But so now I think it's a mistake that they have Salah classed as a midfielder when he's so patently not. I mean, I'm a little disappointed with the sophistication here at playing Fantasy Premier League. I thought I'd be, because people take it so seriously. I was like, Mo Salah as a midfielder, they get Mo Salah alongside Kante, the same number of points if they both score a goal.
Well,
or a clean sheet.
Mo Salah's
that's
obviously
silly.
twice the price, but it did mean actually last season that everybody had the same team by the time you got to the final couple of months of the season, because everybody had Salah, everybody had Bamford because he was one of the few strikers worth having. But yeah, I think maybe actually Kane Lukaku will make it more interesting in a way, because there might be some more variety. Richie, are you in this?
No, it's been many years since I got involved in fantasy football. I'm still of the generation, like you're talking about it being less sophisticated now. Like I remember the days without wanting to play the Brennan's Bread music in the background of having to ring up to pick your fantasy team. This thing cost me a couple of quids, a phone call, and then having a pretty awkward conversation afterwards, saying, "I just wanted Ian Rush back in my team." But yeah, things are a lot more easier these days. But it does seem a little bit less sophisticated than the American fantasy football and fantasy baseball and all that kind of thing, which it's I don't know.
My obsession was there from the days, all right, in the Star when it first started, and it was always won by some family in Achill, and I always wanted to go like visit Achill and visit these people and see what their secret was, because you were probably only allowed to enter one team, yet they would have 5 of the top 6 places, and it was like 10 grand first prize or something, and they used to win it every single year. And then when I was in school for our LCVP project, I ran a fantasy football league, charged everyone a couple of quid. But the way I did it was I literally wrote down their team and went in the Star every week and had to count up the points, which when you had a couple of hundred teams was a lot of work while you were in 4th or 5th year in school, and probably not worth the effort. But that's where my obsession came from, and now I have passed it on to the next generation. And the first words every Tuesday morning after Monday Night Football when my kids wake up is they run into the room and go, "What was the score? Who scored? Any assists? Yellow cards?" And that is the conversation. So it's going to be a stressful few months.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to getting stuck right in this season, and then 3 weeks in, never logging back on because my team had got off to a bad start. That's the way it'll go. By the way, Nathan, can I shamelessly give a quick plug for Golf Weekly?
There's no shame, Joe. There's no shame.
Yeah, so we this was an interesting one. We had Shane Ryan on, who's a brilliant author, journalist. He's written a great book called Chasing the Tiger, and he's writing a book at the moment about the Ryder Cup. So he's kind of going to various tournaments. Anyway, long story short, he was at the WGC this weekend where there was a phenomenal Harris English collapse. That wasn't really the point. The point was Harris English was playing in the final grouping with one Bryson DeChambeau. And so DeChambeau's life is now at a stage where Shane was saying it's definitely crossed into bullying territory, in that at every tee box and for a lot of the shots on the fairway, there's enough fans there with enough beer on board to be shouting, "Hey Brooksy," or "Go Brooksy" to DeChambeau. And DeChambeau, and they're not showing this on TV, it seems, is like staring at them back and almost trying to intimidate them, which doesn't work very well, because as soon as he gets to the next hole, there's a new bunch of people to shout, "Hey Brooksy," and for him to have to try and intimidate back. And he kind of snapped, which was picked up on TV, where someone said it and he said, "Oh, good one," back to the woman in the crowd who had said it. But he kind of stormed off. And on the one hand, it's nothing because footballers get 10 times as much abuse. But I guess the big difference is that's not personal in a way. It's based on who you play for, and, it's white noise. Everybody's getting abuse. Here, DeChambeau's the only one getting abuse. And what it represents is when they say, "Hey Brooksy," it's like a bunch of frat boys ganging up on him saying, "We think it's hilarious that you're being ostracized. We don't like you. We can tell it's upsetting you. We can tell it's affecting your game. And tough luck." And Shane Ryan was great, and he was saying honestly, after 3-4 hours of this, he felt intensely sorry for DeChambeau, who's not that likable a character, but it does not sound like an enjoyable situation at all for him.
No, there is the side of Bryson is a a-hole and doesn't help himself in any way. Like the next step, unfortunately, when you talk about what Shane Ryan is talking about and reading his article during the week, is somebody going under the ropes and something more serious happening, and like the entire game of golf changes forever because of the security implications of something like that. That the fans are emboldened by Brooks to go and cause as much havoc for Bryson as they possibly can, which, regardless of whether you think he deserves some of it or not, just changes the game in any sport, that somebody has been singled out like that.
Yeah, like I'd still be very hopeful something like that wouldn't happen, but even just the situation at the moment is kind of ugly, nasty, and well, I won't labour the point. You can listen to it and it's waiting for you. But we kind of came to the conclusion, and Peter Lorre was on, and he was saying, "Where is Brooks Koepka and all this now?" Like, he must be thinking, a line's been crossed here. I need to come out and quell this somehow, as opposed to when it first happened a month ago, he was offering free beer if you did it.
Yeah, I'd be surprised, but maybe the impending Ryder Cup changes that and Steve Stricker has to get involved and say, actually, as much as you seem to think it's good for Team USA and sparking interest in the game of golf, really, this doesn't benefit anybody.
Yeah.
Fran has been in touch. Your fevered appetite for suffering and pain is very Catholic of you, Nathan. Your son has been born into a secular society. It's no surprise he wants the glory and not the misery. I don't know if he's thought about it quite that much or if that's exactly what happened, but maybe you're right. This son of yours has already achieved expert level troll status. First to England, now Dublin. Yes, that's his entire aim. And in fairness, probably the aim of most 8-year-olds, I'd imagine, Richie.
Absolutely it is, yeah. I get transfer news actually a lot more than I would do from actually working. That's what I get here. I get occasionally every couple of hours I get a burst head around the door and going, oh, do you hear the latest one? And I'll be told about Ashraf Hakimi going to Paris Saint-Germain, or such and such going to Chelsea, or Jules Koundé and where he's going to end up. So yeah, I'll get the trolling just yet, but perhaps that's going to come with the other two.
That's disgraceful parenting, even by the standards of a Roscommon person. I don't know who's a Roscommon person. The fact that Nathan's son wants to follow Dublin is actually worse than asking for an England jersey, says Owen. You can see as an 8-year-old looking through his eyes, what the attraction is. Is your son the new Declan Rice? Asks Phil. Well, head in that direction. And on Mayo's barren spell, do not give up hope. Look at Limerick. I remember as a young woman going to hurling matches and we were beaten over and over again. Now we keep winning, says Helen Culhane. The suffering isn't comparable. It's just not comparable between Mayo and Limerick. But maybe you're right, Helen. Maybe you're right. Maybe we'll. So let's be positive ahead of the weekend. Richie, any positivity for you? Anything happening with Bohs?
Bohs have pulled out a corner in the last couple of minutes just as we speak there, but they're still trailing Pauk by 2-0. There is 58 minutes on the clock at the Toombas Stadium. Those goals coming from Stefan Schwab and Diego Biseswar, both of them in the first half. So Pauk now leading by 3-2 on aggregate, and not long underway either in Albania. We're under 20 minutes on the clock there, where Shamrock Rovers are up against the Albanian champions of Tayuta. Rovers, another team having to deal with pretty scorching temperatures in Albania at the moment. It's north of 30 odd degrees there as they're up against their Albanian opposition. And meanwhile, it's 2-2 between Dundalk and Vitesse. They will be resuming at 8 p.m. Irish time. That is going to be in the Tallaght Stadium. And speaking ahead of the game, Andy Boyle, the Dundalk defender, told their YouTube channel that there are ways of exploiting the Eredivisie side.
They're an expansive side, so definitely on the turnover there's opportunities for us to exploit that. They've got a great way of playing, really. I suppose they play 3 at the back and then the 10 drops in and it makes an extra midfielder and causes probably problems all over the pitch. But I think we've got to go and kind of implement their game plan. We've done some work on in the past couple of days of the strengths and weaknesses of their side, and hopefully we can exploit that on the night.
I should mention as well, still scoreless between Rovers and Tayuta. That Edomo Imaku goal in injury time still separating the sides as Bohs clear yet another Pauk chance as we speak there. Action 2 in the Europa League tonight. Celtic leading Jablonec by 4-2 going into their Europa League qualifier second leg. There's going to be a full house at Parkhead tonight for that one. While St Johnstone could pull off one of the results of the night. They're level at 1-1 with Galatasaray out of their second leg, which is at McDermott Park.
So, one of the transfer sagas of the summer is done. Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah, it is. He is once again a Chelsea player. 7 years after he left for Everton, Chelsea have shelled out €115 million to take him away from Inter. After a disappointing spell at Manchester United, Lukaku rebuilt his career in Milan, scoring 64 goals in 95 games for the Nerazzurri. He signed a 5-year contract at Stamford Bridge.
What do you think, Joe? Lukaku the man to bring them the title?
I mean, I'm really close to saying they'll finish second to City. I do think City will win the league, but increasingly everything about Chelsea looks good, doesn't it? Not least with this fella. Like I was making the point to David Myler last night on the football show that last season Chelsea's top scorer was Jorginho with 7 goals. So you throw Lukaku into that mix, a team that kept clean sheets in 19 of 30 games under Tuchel. The momentum he has, the belief the team will have in him after the way they finished last season. They look really good and they have a lot of squad depth. I would make them most likely to challenge Man City. I don't know how you see it.
Yeah, I still think Liverpool might have a level of consistency that they've been there, they've done that. Chelsea last night, Kante was brilliant last night. it still seems up in the air defensively as to who will be there and what players will come in, and will Rudiger stay, will Zuma stay, who the fullbacks are going to be. But attacking wise, they look like they're going to be exceptional. It's hard to know with Tuchel. Like, they won the Champions League. You cannot underestimate what that takes, and to beat Manchester City, and tactically how he set them up. But also, like, they won 7 of their last 14 games. There was no real consistency. But everything we've seen from Chelsea over the last decade is new manager comes in, spend big, win league. I still think if Kane signs for Manchester City, they will win the league and might win it well.
That is the worry. I don't really want to sit through another 4 or 5 months of City having wrapped up the league next year. I mean, I could just do without that. So I hope someone comes at them. Like, Manchester United are very interesting this season. You've got to think Varane and Sancho really move them along. The Pogba situation will become a bit of a circus as it becomes apparent he's not probably going to re-sign in the last year of his contract. It's hard. Liverpool won't be as bad as last year, so you've got to think one of those 3 will come at City. But damn it, City are just so bloody good. If they get Kane, it gets a bit scary then.
I think it's the if they don't get Kane, I'm not convinced that they win the league. Looking at the striking talent that they have now, if they don't get Kane, maybe they spend 70 million on somebody else, and actually all is just fine. Richie, you had your head in your hands, not in a good way, I suspect.
Yeah, decent chance there was for Georgie Kelly. Actually, Andy Lyons crossed in from the right hand side for Bohs, was met by the head of Georgie Kelly around about 12 yards from goal. He had a free header at it, the league's top scorer, but he headed wide. So still Pauk 2, Bohs 0 on the night. Pauk leading 3-2 on aggregate. GPA Chief Executive Tom Parsons says 50% of the Tyrone squad have contracted COVID-19. The Red Hand County are scheduled to play Kerry in the All-Ireland football semi-final on Saturday week now, but joint manager Brian Dewar has admitted they could struggle to field a team. Parsons told this morning's OTB AM that the most important factor is player welfare, and the GPA will back Tyrone on that basis, even if they decide they can't fulfil the fixture. Parsons, though, says perspective is required.
The situation, Jar, is that it looks like 50% of the squad has contracted the virus. And when you look at a squad is typically 32 to 35 players. And in that, you'll usually have 3 or 4 injuries. So it means there's only 15 or 16 players fit. So there's just so many unknowns because, in the coming days, players are returning back from isolation. And, it's subjective. Symptoms and how we react to symptoms is subjective, so there's no unknowns.
Tom Clay?
Yeah, a really interesting interview with Tom Parsons. Well worth listening to the full thing, and probably given a bit more insight into actually what's happening in Tyrone, Joe. Like 50% of a squad, and then you get into close contacts. Like, the true impact of this probably still isn't known, and they may not know until next Monday or Tuesday just how many are in the clear, how many can play. So I don't know what the right answer here is from a GAA point of view.
Very difficult, yeah. I mean, as Tom Parsons alluded to there, how you react to COVID is subjective and how you recover from COVID is subjective. So I don't think the management will have a strong feel for that until next week when players are given the all clear to return to training. And look, best case scenario is the vast majority are young, fit and healthy, react okay to COVID and return to a very decent level and they can play the game. What do you do if a percentage of them are not feeling themselves? I mean, you can push it back another week, but I mean, there's no guarantees with that either. Do you push it back 2 weeks? There's no guarantees with that either. At a certain point, the game will have to go ahead. And look, it would be awful for the championship if Tyrone have to forego the game or put out a vastly inferior side. But I think there's a distinct possibility now that happens one way or another. Either they forego the game or they'll put out a very understrength side and Kerry will win quite comfortably. I think, unfortunately, that's the most likely outcome here.
News of a big name retiring from hurling, Richie?
Yeah, before we mentioned that, Rovers have just taken the lead away to Toyota. Rory Gaffney has scored that goal for Stephen Bradley's side on 20 minutes. But as you mentioned there, Nathan, Brendan Maher confirming today his retirement from inter-county hurling. The Borsley defender made his senior debut for Tip 15 years ago and would go on to win 3 All-Ireland titles, captaining the side to victory in 2016. Maher collected 3 All-Stars during his time on the Tip panel and was named Young Hurler of the Year in 2010. Former Kilkenny hurler Eddie Brennan today described Maher as pound for pound the best Tip hurler of his generation, while Liam Sheedy, his manager, described him as a dream to work with.
You'd know it's big game week in Mayo. I put my phone down for about 10 minutes yesterday, came back, saw 6 different WhatsApp messages and thought, what have I missed? All of them saying, any truth in the Oisin Mullen rumour? Nobody knows yet, but it's such a rumour at this stage, Richie. There must be some truth in it.
I think there is, yeah. Mayo dealt a fresh injury blow ahead of Saturday's All-Ireland football semi-final with Dublin. Defender Oisin Mullen sustained a thigh injury in training, and he is facing a race to be fit to play the Dubs. Padraig O'Hora, though, is expected to play some part despite picking up a knock in the Connacht final.
Yeah, no Cillian O'Connor. If Oisin Mullen is missing as well, Joe, considering his influence, his ever-growing influence for Mayo, I think it's a mountain to climb against this Dublin side, but without Oisin Mullen, it's hard to make a case.
It is, yeah. Is this the first time Dublin will really be pushed since the All-Ireland final against Kerry? I think it possibly is. So that's interesting. And there's no doubt Dublin are not themselves. So how they react to the challenge Mayo will put up with to them, Mullen or no Mullen, is like going to be fascinating. You still make Dublin huge favourites, but like Mayo really will have a go at them. I don't know. What are the confidence levels down in Mayo? Nathan, are people kind of talking this one up as distinctly possible? And then obviously lose to Kerry in the final, should it go that way. But
I don't think confidence levels are huge, because there's a feeling that this is still a coming side, and I think there's 3 of the team that started the 2017 final who'll probably start the next day, so that's a big transition. But the bit of confidence is from, well, maybe Dublin are done. Maybe there's something there in Dublin this season that is just so off that Mayo can go and catch them. But I think if Cillian O'Connor was there, if they were flying and all their players were fully fit, but maybe this will probably dent the ambitions. But if Dublin are off, going down cliched route, there is no fear for Mayo in a way. They feel physically they can match them, even though it's not the 2017 team. To get into this squad, you have to have a level of physicality, and they've been there at half time last year in the All-Ireland final and the previous year in the semi-final. So if Dublin don't blitz them in that 10-minute spell, why not, eh? Just talk myself into it.
No, yeah.
It was a fine circle you walked in there. It's brilliant.
It is worth stating, and let's say Mullen's fit, just to strengthen the argument. O'Connor missing is obviously huge, but it is worth restating that Mayo, again, did okay last year in the All-Ireland final, and the likes of Mannion and Howard coming off the bench really settled that game, and really allowed Dublin to pull clear. So I would think the feeling in the Mayo camp would be, physically, we empty the tank, we go at them, and they no longer have the advantage on the bench that they once had. They probably still have an advantage on the bench, but I mean, it's way short of where they were a couple of years, even just last year, Dublin. So that's what makes this interesting for me. Do you back Mayo to stay with them physically and to keep things, relatively close, 2-3 points with 10 minutes to go? I think that's distinctly possible. And then Dublin don't necessarily have the cavalry anymore that they once had. So look, you still have to back Dublin for a multitude of reasons, but I have to say, I'm just so looking forward to it. For me, as good as Ulster football has been at times, and we've had 1 or 2 games here or there, for me, and it's an indictment, but the championship starts this weekend. That's really when, and I noticed it, anecdotally amongst friends and everything, for a lot of people, it's the first game they're really kind of clearing the calendar for. So I can't wait for Saturday.
Yeah, either can I. Even with that Dublin supporting son, I will still manage to enjoy the day.
I just hope he taunts you. Do you know what I mean? It's not enough that he supports them. I think he really needs to give it to you in the car.
Well, listen, never mind him taunting me. I will be taunting him when Mayo get it done. Don't you worry about that. Joe, Richie, any other changes in scores, Richie?
Still 2-0 to Pauk, 3-2 on aggregate, and Rovers still 1-0 up thanks to that Rory Gaffney goal away to Teuta. Dundalk, as I say, kicking off at 8 o'clock.
All right, cheers, lads. John Giles up next.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Having a flutter? Top tip, QuinBet.com. Ireland's newest online sportsbook and casino. For all your horse racing, football, casino and more, Quinn